Welcome to the internet, where everything can happen. I don't know the song, but I hope you can have a laugh. Okay, welcome back to Forget My Husband. I'll go make money and tell him to. Okay, chapter 28. I know you're a pervert. Part 6. Sorry. When Tarkan first arrived at Aristine's room, he waited outside the bedroom. That was the first time he had ever waited for a woman. No, anyone at all who was sleeping. He had finished his morning training, held a meeting with his aides, washed up, and changed his clothes, so he was a little taken aback when he got to Aristine's room. He didn't think someone could actually still be sleeping at this time. But soon he remembered that this was right after her long trip here. Even though he called it a long trip, inwardly he thought, wasn't it just a trip in a carriage? But when he considered Aristine's petite frame, he figured it was understandable for her to get exhausted by a carriage trip. Tarkan decided to let her sleep and use this opportunity to go to the training ground and check on the discipline of the warriors. Since Aristine was in deep sleep, the warriors got to taste hell from early in the morning. She must be awake by now, anyone would. But when Tarkan returned, Aristine was still fast asleep. We tried to wake her up as well, but the princess refused to wake up. The handmaid serving the princess informed him as such. Tarkan left the current flowing between the maids was strange. He had never been one to care about the affairs of palace servants, but now this was bothering him. He remembered how the maids in front of him laughed and pointed fingers at Aristine before he picked up Aristine, who was draped in dirty clothes. Tarkan's eyes narrowed. Even though he saw blood yesterday, he felt a taste of bloodthirst. He wondered what he should do. Even as he was pondering about this, he felt like he was going nuts because he thought that Aristine, who was still asleep. Of course, I do not want to die. The way she looked as she said that, in an incredible light tone, there was no way the maids had already made a move. If Aristine was killed now, the war would begin right away. Sylvanus should not want that, since they were yet to recover their military power. Despite thinking that, Tarkan anxiously opened the bedroom door. Your Highness, Tarkan! Their eyes bulged out, as if they couldn't believe that Tarkan dared to trespass into a lady's bedroom as he liked. What sort of barbarous act is this? Even if they were arranged to get married, this was undeniably rude. Ha! Sure enough, even if they look nice on the outside, an illegal barbarian is just. But even that thought process was cut off by Tarkan's next actions. Shock! Because Tarkan roughly pulled open the curtains of the bed where Aristine was sleeping, without the slightest hesitation. You're call a knight. Wait, how are you going to bring a knight into this room? The maids started panicking because of this unprecedented situation. They were definitely not panicking because they were thinking about Aristine or being considerate of her. It was simply because even though they disregarded the princess, what was happening in front of them right now was too shocking. If they were really loyal maids, they would have stopped Tarkan no matter what, even if they had to block him with their bodies, while the maids were merely stamping their feet. Tarkan's eyes fell on Aristine, who was sleeping like the dead on the white bed. His eyes narrowed slightly. The next moment, Tarkan picked her up in his arms. The white blanket wrapped around Aristine's wobbled in the air, like a fish shell in water. Her body fell powerlessly in his embrace. Oh my God! The maids who witnessed this scene were dumbstruck. Aristine still didn't wake up. Tarkan peered into Aristine's unnerving face. Well, her complexion looks okay. Right then, he heard a soft inhaling sound from her slightly parted lips. Tarkan bravely resisted the urge to throw Aristine away. He used his utmost patience to place her back onto the bed, although it was more like dropping her than placing her down. Even with his rough actions, Aristine only smacked her lips, but she didn't wake up. Is this even a human being? Tarkan unconsciously stated. The maids had gone quiet, seemingly having given up on Tarkan's being in the bedroom. In the meantime, Tarkan found himself a seat in the bedroom and gave the maids an order. Tea. The maids looked at Tarkan like he was being rude, but they quietly served him tea. For some reason, 3 people brought the serving tray together. Here you go, Your Majesty. I didn't add sugar. Yet because I don't know your preference, Your Highness. Please tell me what you like. Do you want any cream? The 3 annoyances turned around to bother him. Tarkan's forehead creased. Can one person bring the tea? When he said that, the maids froze and withdrew with their reddened faces. Tarkan suddenly felt a rush of exhaustion and decided to leave after having a cup of tea. He had never felt tired even when he stayed up for 3 days straight, but to think he felt exhausted now. Truly, what a great woman. Just when he was laughing at the ridiculousness of it all, he suddenly heard a puff sound. Finally, the steam sleeping princess was awake. Aristine looked suspiciously at Tarkan, who lowered his head and fell silent for a while. Why is he acting like this? Is he embarrassed? At that thought, a particular idea flashed through her mind. Why was he so embarrassed when she asked him why he didn't wake her up? He had seen a scene similar to this in the water surface in the mirror. There was a man who couldn't bear to wake a woman up because she was sleeping too angelically, so he just watched over her. And when the woman woke up and asked why he didn't wake her up, he acted like he just did. Once she figured out the right answer, Aristine smiled brightly, a flawless and clear smile. Oh, I get it. I was sleeping too angelically, so you couldn't wake me up, right? No need to be ashamed. Tarkan didn't say anything. He couldn't say anything. Instead, the grip of his trembling hand tightened heavily, giving a clear reflection of what he was feeling. With a little more strength, his ceramic cup would probably shatter. But Aristine began a little hesitantly. That made him uneasy. Tarkan wanted to get up right now and cover her mouth. But Aristine was faster. To secretly open someone's bed curtains and appreciate their sleeping appearance while enjoying your tea. The light in her purple eyes turned strange as she scanned Tarkan up and down. Well, I mean, everyone is free to have their preferences, Herbert. Her gaze was exactly the same as when she said those words. But I would appreciate it if you refrained from me at least. Tarkan's blood pressure spiked. He felt like he needed a cup of cold tea. That's the end of chapter 28. I know it's a bit weird, sorry. Next, chapter 29. I know you're a pervert. Part 7. As a matter of course, Tarkin wasn't that idol of a person. He certainly didn't enjoy watching people sleep. He visited Aristine's room because he had a very distinct purpose. I assume it was a good idea for you to have prior knowledge of the discussion before your delegation is granted an audience with the king. Oh my, how kind of you. I can't believe you came to tell me that yourself. I guess you were quite impressed with the ability I showed yesterday. Looks like I shouldn't have come. I'll take my leave. When she saw Tarkin's move like he was about to leave immediately, Aristine narrowed her eyes. To think you're leaving so easily. I knew it. Having a purpose was an excuse. It must have been my angelic sleep. Once he heard her muttering, Tarkin gulped down the entire tea in his cup. His insides were burning so much that the whole tea felt like cold water. Seeing him like that, Aristine grinned. Got down from the bed and stood in front of Tarkin. So which is it? Were you impressed by my ability? Or is there an angelic way? I was impressed by your ability. Tarkin spat out begrudgingly. Aristine's eyes curled softly. Right. Of course. I think I'm pretty great too. Aristine's impassive face looked absolutely serious without any playfulness. Seriously, I have never seen such a woman. No, such a person before. Tarkin swallowed the sigh that was about to leave his mouth and nodded lightly. For now, let's get out of this blasted room that supposedly has a sleeping angel. We have to eat after all. At those words, Aristine's eyes lit up. Food! Yesterday's dinner was very delicious too, so she was really looking forward to it. Her face revealed her true emotions. She had since she woke up today. Tarkin turned away when he saw her purple eyes sparkling like stars. What a strange woman. When she looked like this, he found it hard to believe she was the same person who dealt with the other royals before the king. Somehow, he felt she would show that kind of appearance at the welcome party for the delegations tonight. I feel like that. Tarkin was a little surprised by his thoughts. Then he mumbled to himself. It's just a thought, not an expectation. There was no way he was expecting that. We should arrive right on time for the audience later, not beforehand. Aristine babbled on as they walked towards the dining hall. Right, that would be the best. If we go early, we'll only encounter bumps in the road. That's true, but I have another reason. At that, Tarkin looked at Aristine, and Aristine grinned. We say we'll try our best, right, partner? Her twinkling purple eyes shone mischievously. Let's go over the details while we eat. Oh, before that, there's a little something I want you to prepare. My goodness, Lady Rosaline. After all that, she wants to stick to the princess now. It's ridiculous how she's acting. Like that when she's the one who harassed the princess the most. The maids pursed her lips as they watched Rosaline help Aristine get dressed up. When they saw her act like the princess dog, wagging her tail everywhere, their annoyance roared. It was a sense of crisis they were feeling deep down, but they refused to admit it. They approached Aristine with coy expressions on their faces. Princess, isn't this a little too much? A maid began arrogantly, but Aristine didn't react whatsoever. When she didn't even glance at them, the maids having disbelieved. Rosalind stepped forward. How dare you behave this way to Her Highness? I should be asking you that. What do you think you're doing right now, Lady Rosalind? It's already bad enough that a handmaid is helping Her Highness prepare for an audience with the Irigos king. How can you even hold your head up? Rosalind's dark green eyes sharpened, and she glared at the maids. At her momentum, the other maids faltered. Just as Rosalind lacked the harassment of Aristine so far, she was also the one with the strongest personality out of all the maids. But there were some who weren't intimidated at all. You know, it's ridiculous to hear that from you, of all people, Lady Rosalind. Lady Brodie. Brodie thought it was even more ridiculous to fear someone like Rosalind, who knelt and barked in front of that stupid princess. Brodie's own face got burned because of the princess. She was getting treated for it, but it was recovering slowly, because she hadn't been able to show it to any priest or magician. Whenever she looked in the mirror, she ground her teeth at the hideously swollen blister. In fact, she was burned because she tried to pour hot water on Aristine in the first place. But that fact had long disappeared from her mind. Don't misunderstand. We're not against the princess. The role of a handmaid is to advise as well, is it not? As Brodie said that, she grabbed Aristine's shoulder and roughly turned her around. This is an occasion where you will meet the king of Irigo, as a representative of the great Sylvanus Empire. So how can you wear Irigo clothing? Like she said, Aristine was wearing an Irigo style dress, since they didn't bring any proper clothing from the Empire. Aristine had no clothing but to wear the clothes prepared by the Irigo people. Naturally, you should wear Sylvanus clothes when you represent Sylvanus. Brodie gave the other maids a look, and they brought Aristine's clothing. It was the formal dress that had gotten flaccid and shabby because she wore it for most of the journey to Irigo. Now, this is the dress that His Majesty the Emperor personally presented to you. Princess, to congratulate you on your marriage. As a daughter and a servant of the Emperor, you must wear this dress. Aristine didn't respond to anything she said. She simply gave Rosalind a glance as calm as flowing water. Upon receiving that gaze, Rosalind flinched. She realized this couldn't continue. Fuck! A sharp noise passed through the room. Brodie blinked, finding it hard to believe what just happened. Her left cheek burned, and it felt like it was swelling up. She lifted her trembling hand and touched her cheek. Did she just slap me? She couldn't believe it. Bringing such filthy clothes before her presence is practically an insult to Her Highness. Reflect on yourself. Ha! Have you lost your fucking mind? You out of all people are telling me off. The reason this dress is even like this is because of you. Brodie pointed at Rosalind and screamed with rage. A dogfight. Aristine thought to herself as she watched the maids, feeling like a spectator on the other side of the river. Through this incident, it seemed the arrows of the maids were now pointed at each other instead of Aristine. It should get less annoying. Aristine checked her watch and rose from the seat. That's the end of chapter 29. Chapter 30. A Very Shy Pervert. Part 1. The first princess is the one that came, not the second, right? I heard she's half mad. So she came in a crazy dress. The queen's brows stared at the mutterings of the nobles. The story of Aristine arriving at Tarquin's palace yesterday in a dirty attire had spread and magnified in the blink of an eye. on the other hand, they were surprisingly quiet about what happened while she had tea with Neftir. That was not surprising, especially since such words would only benefit Tarkan. Most of the nobles supported Hamil, but there was a considerable number of nobles who were maintaining their neutrality because the king's intentions were unclear. The flow of Tarkan's bloodline was offset to some extent by his marriage to Aristine. Regardless of their hostilities, the Sylvanus imperial family was the oldest standing royal family on the entire continent. Their precious bloodline was said to have gold flowing in their veins instead of red blood. The queen's eyes twitched slightly. Who would have thought he would attach the princess of Sylvanus to that lowly thing? Anger surged within her at the king's decision, but she couldn't let it show. At any rate, that was a marriage that brought about the end of the war. If she opposed it, it meant she didn't care about the peace of the country because of her desire to get her son on the throne. Either way, in this situation, it wasn't good for favorable words to spread about Aristine or Tarkan. Yenikurine, Pelamian, Martin, and Starline were ordered by the queen to remain silent about what happened yesterday. But right now, it doesn't help if the princess is believed to be a lunatic. Yenikurine said she didn't need to care because the princess was a fool in comparison. But something about her bothered the queen. If the princess happened to be politically resourceful, this prejudice would be flipped on its head and actually benefit her. Right when the queen was about to open her mouth to correct this atmosphere, "Queen!" Nefter called her. At that, she smiled and turned her head. "Yes, your majesty?" "There doesn't seem to be enough seats." "Pardon?" The queen looked around with doubt in her eyes. All the royals and nobles were sitting in their seats according to protocol. However, there were no empty seats. Aristine and Tarkan had not yet arrived because there was still some time before the audience began. There were people coming, but no empty seats. What this meant was clear. The queen's face darkened. "I guess the palace steward made a mistake. I will..." "You didn't confirm such a thing, queen?" "How could that be?" "Of course, she's checked. In fact, she was the one who instructed for Aristine and Tarkan's seat to be removed." However, she didn't blink an eye as her face grew solemn. "I'm afraid this was my carelessness, your majesty. I was overwhelmed with happiness by the end of the war and long-standing hostilities between our two countries that I forgot to confirm beforehand." The queen drew out her words to drag out the time. After going through the trouble of removing those seats, she couldn't let it be in vain now. Just a little bit more. It should be happening soon anyway, and sure enough, the voice of an attendant resounded loudly through the room, announcing the arrival of His Highness Tarkan and the Princess of the Sylvanus Empire, Her Highness Aristine, with the delegation. At those words, both the royals and the nobles prepared themselves to witness a grand ridicule and fall. Tarkan was to end up very embarrassed because of his new bride today. Soon, the door opened, and Aristine, who was holding Tarkan's hand, was revealed. The people sitting in the audience room couldn't bring themselves to say anything. Their eyes widened like it was going to split open. They watched Aristine move into the room, feeling unreal at the vast difference from their imagination. Dressed in red silk, with her long silvery hair falling down like wisteria petals, Aristine looked startling, like she existed in her own world. I greet the King of Irigo. A clear and elegant voice rang through the hall. Only then did people regain their senses, like they had been released from a spell. No one opened their mouths, but all sorts of thoughts were running through their minds. Amidst the noisy silence, the king's voice cut through the air. You have come a long way, princess. Irigo welcomes you. I would like to offer my appreciation for the hospitality Irigo has shown me. Speaking, pronunciation, gaze, and expression, no single thing was out of place or over the top. She was too calm for a princess who was said to be half-witted due to be confined for a long time. She probably practiced that greeting 1,000 times, so she won't look ridiculous on Irigo. I'm sure the people around her made her keep practicing since it is her first audience. The royals who had seen her look like a street rat tried to convince themselves. It didn't make sense to come to that conclusion, considering she came to the palace looking like a beggar. But they didn't think that deeply about it, because the thought in her mind had to be right. I thought it was a long journey. Wasn't it difficult? I was very worried when I learned about you using the old-fashioned carriage instead of a portal. Outwardly, the queen seemed to speak kindly to Aristine, but the meaning hidden in that statement was full of ridicule. For this marriage, the portal between the two hostile countries was supposed to be opened for the first time in 270 years. However, Sylvanus refused. For the queen to bring up the portal and carriage in this situation. Her intentions were clear. She knew the emperor deliberately made Aristine suffer. You might be called a princess, but you're just a reject who's not even allowed to use a portal. Or something like that, I guess. Aristine turned to the queen, and her lips drew a soft arc. It was a journey to stop the spill of blood in the war. How can one possibly call it hard? The peace of our countries depends on our marriage, but you want to argue about this? This was obvious what Aristine's words meant. The royals and nobles who perceive Aristine to be a half-crazy fool couldn't hide their agitation. They thought that even if she wasn't an idiot, she wouldn't understand the queen's implicit meaning and be caught unaware like a fool. And even if she understood it, you expected her to get angry without being able to come up with a sensible response. What the? This is different from the rumors. Isn't it? I definitely heard she looked strange when she arrived yesterday, though. I thought she was confined and not educated properly. Darkon felt a little pleased as he looked at all their stupid faces. Indeed, his partner was no ordinary person. Before, people could calm their agitation. Aristine spoke again. As you say, the portal is comfortable. But even if it took a little toll on my body, I believe it was worth traveling to Irigo from Sylvanus and seeing things with my own eyes. Her calm voice resonated strongly through the hall. The war has devastated the lives of citizens in both countries. It breaks my heart, and my exhaustion is simply nothing in comparison. For someone in position to lead and govern people, this was the best model answer to exist. The queen's mouth twitched. Nonsense. The emperor stopped you. That is what she wanted to scream, but obviously she couldn't. Normally, Esterline would have added something stupid, but she was playing it safe after what happened yesterday. The Emperor of Sylvanus has a good child, so you had a deeper reason for not using the portal, princess. The King of Irigo gave a satisfied smile and knocked on his armrest heartily. The praise, which was practically a decoration, made the queen squeeze her eyes shut. That's the end of chapter 30. That's everything for today. I hope you enjoy it and look forward to tomorrow's chapters. Have a good night. Bye.